Then we start. As we all know, climate change has been happening for as long as Homo erectus has inhabited this globe. As the last ice cap in northern Europe melted, the consequences must have been quite intimidating and overwhelming for the generations living at that time. The visible landscape changed on an almost daily basis, with land emerging from the sea, and new roaring rivers affecting the flora and the fauna, demanding new ways of adaptation. Today we witness climate change in northern Europe as well, with increasing heavy rain, landslides, flooding and erosion along the coast. As you can see, this is an overview of how climate is predicted in Norway to change. As you probably know, skiing is very important for Norwegians. There is already a sense of national depression, as future with less snow seems to be unavoidable. And like we experience the result of spring tides, the shipwreck from the 19th century was revealed on a beach in southwest Norway last year. The changing climate affects in situ preservation of cultural heritage sites. As archaeologists, we always want to preserve as many sites as possible. This is, of course, not possible. So, what to do?
In Norway, we develop scientific programs as a basis for prioritizing between sites for excavation, to preserve them in situ or to leave them to the ravages of wind and weather. If we decide to excavate sites, we want to choose those ones that will give us new knowledge rather than reproduce results as a verification of what we already know. If we decide to preserve a site in situ, it should potentially contain material that will provide new knowledge in the future. 10 years ago, the Directorate for Cultural Heritage decided to develop our first research program for archaeological heritage in dams. The main goal was to have a solid scientific basis for prioritizing which dams to investigate and which sites to excavate, preserve and monitor in situ or let go, because regulated dams destroy heritage sites. The scientific program of 2009 included a survey or general overview of what is known about cultural history related to lakes and watercourses. Further, it presented the archaeological challenges as seen at the time. What should be the main issues when planning and conducting new archaeological excavations in the years to come in these locations? And what kind of knowledge would lead to new and interesting questions for future projects? We believe that a scientific program is a necessary basis when it comes to distributing available and restricted means to do archaeological work. We do not believe in excavating sites that are threatened by climate change without a relevant scientific focus, or for that matter, use resources to preserve sites in situ without a clearly formulated reason. It is not that we do not believe in securing source material for future research, but how much material is it possible for us to take care of? In Norway, cultural heritage is regarded the responsibility of the state government. At the same time, the polluter pay principle is incorporated in the Cultural Heritage Act. This means that if you have been granted permission to remove a cultural site that is protected, you must pay for the archaeological excavation. The material and the documentation from the excavation belongs to the state. 5 university museums and 3 maritime museums are obliged to preserve the artifacts, carry out research, and communicate knowledge about the past. These 8 museums, however, have limited resources when it comes to all these 3 tasks. One problem is, for instance, space for artifact collections, and from time to time museums discuss discarding material that they regard as uninteresting for future research. The main goal for archaeology is knowledge, or understanding of past societies, one reason being the need to understand ourselves and our society. Collecting data through excavation simply for the sake of collecting data is rather uninteresting. It is important to move from material or data to knowledge through contextualizing the material. To do so, you need to define questions, and these questions should be scientifically based and put forward before an excavation takes place. Total documentation of an archaeological site is not possible. Only through a conscious approach to the site based on theory and method will your results be made relevant for research and dissemination. Resources are constrained in Norwegian archaeology as they are all over the world. At the same time, we are trying to build a system where scientific programs govern which sites are excavated and how these sites are made subjects for further research. New knowledge from this research is widely communicated, for instance, in museums, books, or on the internet social media. When it comes to priorities, there are many factors that need to be considered. The priorities of today are based on present knowledge, but new knowledge is produced every day. When will your priorities be outdated? How often do you need to revise them? As climate is changing, you need to project how the change will affect cultural heritage sites in different areas and different surroundings in 20, 50 or 80 years. But will the sites you choose to preserve in situ be the right ones in 20 years? When you compare them to the level of future knowledge? It is impossible to say, but the hypothesis must be debated. The climate change affects Norwegian heritage in different ways, depending on where the sites are located. Norway has a long coastline, more than 110,000 kilometers, which is about 10 times the size of Scotland's coastline. And from north to the south, it is almost 1,800 kilometers. When the Scandinavian ice cap started to melt, people settled along the coast. The Director for Cultural Heritage considers taking care of sites from this early marine coastal adaptation an international responsibility, as few other places on Earth can display the same collection of sites from mobile, marine-oriented hunter-gatherers from the early Mesolithic. Sites from pioneer settlement are today found at different altitudes along the coast. In some parts of the country around 150 to 200 meters above sea level, in other parts they are located on the present shores. The sea level is projected to increase by 15 to 55 centimeters along the Norwegian coast by the year 2100. It might not seem very much, but this is the result of the Scandinavian peninsula still rising. The risk for major spring tides thus increases and will be ever more frequent and devastating. Effects on climate change on early Mesolithic sites will vary along the coast, depending on how high above the sea level sites are located. In some parts of the country there will be no impact, in others there will be huge impact. If the Archaeological Society should choose to concentrate its attention only to the sites that are threatened by climate change, new knowledge of the pioneer settlement in Norway will be unequally distributed. We do not want that. We want new knowledge on the early Mesolithic in all parts of the country in order to fully understand how our country was populated and how this pioneer society functioned. To counteract unequally distributed research, we believe that comprehensive debate when producing and renewing scientific programs is the right approach. It is a fact that all archaeological sites cannot be preserved in situ or excavated. The challenge will always be, are we discussing and dealing with the right ones? Is the number of sites that we excavate or choose to preserve in situ and monitor professional or sound? And in what time perspective? For 100 years or 1,000 years? The latter not that long for an archaeologist.
Today, there are only a few archaeological projects in Norway related directly to climate change. Some of these are being presented here today. Two other projects are in the high mountains. Secrets of the Ice, the archaeology of glaciers and ice patches, and Snow Patch Archaeological Research Corporation called SPARC, and the acronym for this one. Both are ongoing interdisciplinary and international project. In addition, there is a project on Svalbard that we have heard about earlier today, about the protection of cultural heritage in the permafrost. In this presentation, we will give a small glimpse into the ongoing project. Snow patches are decreasing due to climate change. For more than 12,000 years, man has hunted reindeer in northern Europe. During summertime, insects are a severe nuisance to the reindeer, and the animals seek relief on the snow patches, and in this way easily expose themselves to hunters. New findings from such hunting and other activities like transportation and pilgrimage are now emerging from the ice and snow. The snow patches are so rapidly decreasing that the number of exposed artifacts is more than can be secured. As soon as the artifacts leave the ice, the decomposition starts. Metal rust, wood, leather and textile rot and are easily lost. In the county of Uppland, the project puts emphasis on rescuing finds and on climate studies. Every summer, a rescue team of archaeologists from the county and archaeological museums carry out surveys in the mountains. At least 2,000 artifacts from nearly 50 different locations have been collected during the last 10 years. The finds have generated a lot of new knowledge regarding how the mountains have been used for thousands of years, and several research projects have been performed, like the reconstruction of the tunic from one of the glaciers, dating from about 300 AD. The Spark project targets the finds from central Norway. The project focuses on the challenge of securing information related to artifacts, ecofacts, and heritage environments, trying to uncover their cultural, historical, and environmental significance. Further, the project is investigating the present condition and development of snow patches as natural systems. The aim is to discover their potential as archives of climatic information and predict future challenges regarding heritage preservation. The results from the project will form the basis for recommendations and guidelines to help in heritage management, organizations, and public and professional management of such areas in the future. Both projects cooperate with the Norwegian Nature Inspectorate. With local officers on operative duty, they already patrol the areas of the snow patches and they will pick up any artifacts along their route. The work is done in accordance with guidelines for how to deal with specific types of artifacts, etc. This is a valuable surplus for the heritage management, and a lot of artifacts and information are collected which otherwise would have been lost. We used to believe, as Ann-Katrine already has said, that the cold and dry Arctic would preserve historic remains forever. It's not so anymore. Melting permafrost and increased coastal erosion is eating away at cemeteries and buildings on Svalbard. This recognition led to archaeological excavations conducted last year and this August. Before starting this year's excavation by Lise Lochtvedt, a governor's officer, two main issues were put forward: to obtain more knowledge about the condition for preservation of the graves, mainly from Dutch whaling about 1700 AD. Secondly, to get more knowledge about how burials are organized. How old are the different burial areas? Are the burials organized by nationality or by ship, by employer, or even by status? One complete burial has been rescued and brought to Svalbard Museum, and further investigations will reveal the conditions for preservation. Analysis will be done in an attempt to answer where the hunters came from, their diet, health, illness, etc. The final conclusions about the burials will not be available until next year, but the results from the investigations will help us to prioritize when and where to conduct rescue excavation on Svalbard in the coming years. All the projects presented here today will in the time to come contribute to knowledge. This knowledge will help us understand better how climate change affects preservation of cultural heritage and how society can deal with the consequences for cultural heritage. Archaeology is a science that studies past societies, but that doesn't mean it has no relevance for contemporary society. We believe that archaeologists have an obligation to involve all people in the fascination of past times and to make them reflect on their own present and future. By continuously bringing new knowledge about the past to the public, our relevance as participant in important debates about the future will grow, not least when the climate is the subject.